Right. Thanks, Aishwarya, for joining this podcast. Um, we are going to be talking a lot about AI and data science, and since both of us kind of work in different applications of this, I think this chat will be pretty interesting in the way like we both apply data science, right? So the first thing I want to it's like the elephant in the room that we need to get a little bit of clarity on. A lot of people ask me, right, because I work in the robotic space. A lot of people ask me, hey, what about the robots taking over the world? Like, when are they taking over the world? Or why do you steal other people's jobs? Or why do you work on this technology that will steal other people's jobs and stuff like that? So let's just clear the air, and I'm pretty sure you also get a lot of these questions, right? So what's your take on like how applications of AI, different applications of AI, will take over the world? So do you think they'll really take over the world, or what do you think about it?
So I think like most of the questions which I get is around like how AI is disruptive to human in general. So people are really scared because they feel that like my data is getting hacked by someone. Like these companies are they are trying to use my data for like any random purposes, or like they are doing some sort of surveillance over me. But that's probably not how it works. Like companies are not really targeting individuals for using these data. There definitely has been ill effects of these AI technology where the data has been breached, or unknowingly there has been like vandalization of data from users. But that was not how it was aimed for. The actual AI application, it was not designed for this, and what happened was probably just a side effect. And that's where I again like affirm, like most of the people who are using AI technologies, is that everyone is working on building ethical and responsible AI systems. Everyone is trying to understand that what could be a ill effect in these applications, and people are designing human centric systems. So that's something which is progressing slowly, and as AI is something which is not going to be taking over overnight, it's going to be a very slow progress. People are going to see these side effects. They are going to start working on what could be the remedies for this, and how can they build more robust and resilient systems. So it is going to be a very slow process, and it is going to be very like slowly naturalized into our lifestyle.
I see. Yeah, this is very relatable to the kind of question I get, being someone who works in the robotic space, right? Where they I mean, I try to answer this question giving an analogy of the horse cart era, and how probably the Ford Model T, which was like pretty much the first production vehicle that took over the world, or that especially in the US, changed that. So the automotive industry, of course, at that time would have been considered as some sort of technology that is stealing jobs from a horse cart rider or driver, right? But in retrospect, if you look at it now, which is probably a couple centuries after that, you see a lot of other jobs being created which are significantly higher skilled than a horse cart driver. Exactly, right? And that has boosted the pace of humanity, in that now you have overnight deliveries. I'm not talking about overnight deliveries just being automotive phenomenon, but a mobility phenomenon, right? And like this, if you look at the data points that have brought us from that point to now, you can easily see how this has revolutionized the way we do work. So I mean, this take it to the next level, and robotics is an area that will make lives much easier. Like, for example, think of those chimney sweepers in London, right? Like they used to employ little kids to go down the chimneys and sweep the chimneys, and a lot of kids died like that. Now imagine if there was a robot that did that in unsafe conditions. How many lives would have been saved? And how easy, or how much easier the humanity in general would have been able to solve certain problems. So I think that is really interesting, in that these are all the benefits that robotics and AI, all of these bring, and those are those are the places where we need to like objectively think, and it's hard because you need to think at a different level of abstraction to understand the benefits of it versus just look at what threat it poses to you directly.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the second thing I think you mentioned when we were talking off stage is that this is not going to be an overnight phenomenon, right? This is going to take a lot of time. So why don't you shed a little bit of light on the time-taking nature of this, which gives humanity, the time to, adapt to this.
So one of the examples that I can think of, which I want to share, is that how digitization took over, right? Initially, everything was mostly done manually. Like if you're going to a hospital, there'll be like a person who's writing down your name, who is writing down your medical conditions, and they don't have any, easier means to understand what's your preconditions or like what is your medical history. Versus what you have right now is everything is digitized. Like you have a centralized system where all your data is stored, and if as in when you're like visiting a hospital, you don't have to spend that much time on telling the doctor or like telling the physicians what issues you have previously, and that time is saved. Now the doctor already has a e-record of all your medical conditions, everything that you have gone through in medical history, and that speeds up the entire process. So one of the things that I see it in a way is that these technologies are built to solve a problem. When you're building these technologies, there could be side effects, there could be like other problems which are associated with it, and that needs to be solved. This technology which has been built is not to disrupt any industry. It is mostly to equip people with better features. It is to help people grow in a certain direction. Another thing, if you can think about when you were talking about like horse carts, right? The amount of time that people used to spend on traveling from point A to point B has been reduced by like 100x factor, right? Like you don't spend so much time in traveling. Like initially, just making an international trip was like you have to plan it months and months ago. But right now, just like going from one country or like one continent to the other has become a very seamless thing, and people are still working in developing that technology into a better shape where they can like improve the process or like they can improve the efficiency. So it is just a slow progression which is again done for the betterment of the humanity in general. And there will always be like these friction coming from outside which is trying to disrupt it, because in turn we are just trying to build a more resilient system. So everyone who's like trying to pose any friction around it is basically doing to make it more resilient. So whenever somebody says that, hey, this could be a problem, for me as a data scientist, I do reconcile on that and I think that, oh, could that actually be a problem and could that be fixed in some way? So that's just a slow process, and iteratively you have to build a better and better system. There is not going to be like one final best system. It is an iterative process where you're trying to build a better system as you go through the period.
Yeah, that is you brought up an interesting point, which is iterating and optimizing it in the right direction. That's pretty much important, because if we get deviated in the directionality of that iteration, then we can soon end up with something that has a destructive power. So there's a school of thought. There's actually two schools of thought. One is that to make sure that this goes down the right direction, we need heavy regulation of it. The second school of thought is pretty much like the same, another version of the same school of thought is that if it goes down a certain direction and it's bad, then it has to also, an effort has to go down another direction which is good to counterbalance that, right? And then there's like another school of thought saying this should be completely deregulated, and anybody should be able to do whatever they want to balance it out. So, and there are prominent figures, right, that either back one or the other, and then it. I mean, in my opinion, very soon we'll also be seeing like high profile lobbies around this and special interests being protected and stuff like that. So, what do you think about like regulation of AI and regulation of this whole new this whole upcoming technology in general?
So as you were talking about like the ill effects and the good effects, if you are building a system which is even remotely having a 50-50 possibility of good and bad, then it doesn't even make sense to have that technology in the first place, because it's like solving a problem that never existed, right? So what is majorly important is that when, say, product managers or like data scientists or researchers are working together on building such systems, it is important for you to, one, have humans as the centric goal, that these are the users who are going to use the systems. And it is somewhere the regulation goes in a way that you realize one error or like one issue in the system that you have built, and then you start branching out to what are the other possible issues that could arise with it, and then you're starting to, like, put firewalls on all these other issues that might come in place. So that is exactly what we have seen in the entire like data science and machine learning era in the recent past, that companies had made blunders, like companies making these AI systems, making these data science systems had made blunders, and that's why we had GDPR, we have CCPA in place to regulate these issues. Again, is the question is it a completely foolproof system? No, it is still work in progress, right? And when you're talking about regulations, like as we see in GDPR and CCPA, the major issue that we saw was around protecting users' data. That's what everyone was concerned about. That how do we protect users' data? What companies are concerned about is, if I don't have enough data, how am I supposed to build personalized models? How am I supposed to cater to all your needs, to all your requests, if I don't have your data? Like, you want me to like give you the best recommendations for restaurants, you want me to give you the best recommendations for movies. How do I do it if I don't have your data, right? That's where one of the recent researchers we saw was in federated learning, where they are trying to decentralize the model training while the data is still being protected in edge devices or users' devices. And that actually came into a lot of boom, because not just industries which are using B2C, where like real users are interacting with these applications, but also companies or like industries like finance saw how they can leverage this by, like integrating multiple financial institutions together and building better anti-money laundering systems. So that's where it is important to like have these regulations, because they keep posing positive challenges for you, so that you're building better systems.
Yeah, I think speaking on that note, right? Like if you look at the ways seat belts were in the in the automotive industry in general, there were years and years and years of lobbying around, seat belts. People were bringing all these like made up proofs that seat belts don't make a vehicle more safe. And Elon Musk goes into a lot of this in one of his Joe Rogan podcasts. But if you associate that even with the aerospace industry, you see a lot of regulation in airlines and travel and things like that, right? And in general, in the grand scheme of things, that has made us safe.
Yeah.
And more than logically made us safe, it creates a system where people build trust.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
We as a society start trusting certain technology,
Yeah.
which also becomes a catalyst for that technology to improve, because
Yeah,
there's more
exactly.
trust and more
Yeah.
adoption and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
So this is this kind of makes me go into the privacy side, because, and I know you brought up like GDPR and all those privacy laws that are coming up, right? In the hardware or in the physical manifestation, and most of it which is self-driving and robotics and things like that, from a privacy standpoint, right? Like I recently was in this other podcast where the only thing we talked about was consumer privacy in a in a robotic environment. What if you have a kitchen robot that's cooking food for you, and what if that is able to get hacked, right? And somehow there's like a certain hack that happens there, which either in the more innocent sense makes your food bad, just because you don't enjoy your food and you have a terrible time one time, or it poisons your food. So that that's the extreme case of killing someone or something like that. So how, like, what do we do? Like, what challenges do you see on the data side. Now I work on robots, and in the physical manifestation, yeah, there are a bunch of things we can do to make sure that the probability of that is reduced.
Yeah.
But then in the whole data collection standpoint, because like you said, the data is important for you to build better products. How do you think someone, even if a robot doesn't intend to do it in itself, someone doesn't have the power to hack a robot to kill someone?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, like something like hacking a robot, right? That's more than an ill effect of AI. It is an ill effect of internet, or ill effect of having a cloud computing technology. And like recently we had seen, like a lot of privacy breaches of photos being leaked out for like famous personalities. And that was not a ill effect of AI in general. It was an ill effect that we have such connectivity, right? We have the access to like control one systems while you're sitting probably in another continent. So that's something which needs to be regulated in a like in more of a internet protocol standpoint, on how you make sure that which devices are able to control this particular like robot, or like what is the area in around which the signals are to be like sent to this robot, and like that's when you're able to control it. Or you can also like have more regulated way on what the robot is able to do, right? What the functionalities are supposed to be in the robot. For example, like a good example I can give is talk about Tesla, right? When you're talking about Tesla and having those issues around like regulating full self driving in the car, it is that matter of 1% where the car might go wrong. Like who should be blamed for that 1% where the car might go wrong? And that's where like government are trying to figure out what is the best way to regulate it while make it a great technology for people to utilize and people to consume. So that's a very thin balance, and I think like government officials or like data officers, everybody is working towards that single aim. But it's not as easy of a problem as it seems to be. It's not like one problem that you're targeting. It If you're trying to like fix one knob, there are like four different knobs which open up. So that's like a very critical problem around data regulation, which people are trying to understand. And as I mentioned, it's not just one space of data or AI or like machine learning that needs to be fixed. It is somewhere a huge concept of cloud computing and internet. That's where is the foundation of this issue, where it's coming from.
I see. Yeah. So would you be, so in today's day and age, knowing the sort of holes in the system, right? In privacy and things like that. I'm curious to know what level of robotics or automation or like everyday robots at home are you willing to accept at this point? What is okay for you, and what is, hey, let's not get there?
Funny story. So we have a robotic vacuum cleaner at our place, and it does like does a good job, because I'm not spending, let's say, like 2 hours or 3 hours of my time cleaning my house, right? Like I can just switch it on from my phone and it is able to like clean my entire space. So I was just like having this conversation with my boyfriend, that what if the robotic vacuum cleaner is actually able to listen to us? Like what if I was like some like executive, and somebody tries to hack that Roomba and it is able to listen to our conversations, right? Like you don't know like what could be the other side of it. What if it gets hacked by someone and they are able to like have a videography of the entire house? So these are some of the issues which are inherently there. But it also, and it's a black box for me, like as a user, even being a data scientist, I feel it's a black box for me. So I can completely understand someone who's not coming from this background or like this space, how would that person be feeling when they are handling these AI applications. But it is again like a slow process. People trusting these technologies happen slowly. Is it foolproof? No. It can only get better as in when we are talking. It is just like a matter of time that people start using these technology, realize that okay, there are only say 1% of the issue which is coming with this technology, but 99% of the time it is really helping me. It is saving my time. It is like making my life better. And it's a slow process on how people start building this trust on AI technology. And it is also a word of mouth that you see that somebody uses it, they have like a really good experience, they tell you like what could be the pros and cons of it, and then you make a like informed decision if you want to go ahead with it or not.
Yeah, speaking of informed decisions, right? I see that a lot of people are either underinformed or misinformed,
Yeah.
right? About what a certain company, whatever it is, be it Tesla or be it anyone else, what they are doing with the data and what they are doing, um, how they are leveraging this, right? So and different people do use it in different ways, and it's just a spider web of things for us to understand.
Yeah.
Hey, okay, Google is using it this way and Tesla is using it this way.
Yeah.
Here's the good person, and here's like, hey, maybe I'm not ready for that product yet, kind of thing. So I'm curious here, doesn't this open up an opportunity for, you know a company, whoever it is, maybe a startup,
Yeah.
right, that is built on the fundamental premise of educating the users in layman terms,
Yeah.
about what any company is doing.
Mhm.
And then these companies, these big players who actually want their data driven products to become accessible to people, in the name of transparency,
Mhm.
like use these companies, this, whatever startup services, in the education side of things.
Yeah.
Where people know, okay, I get all my information from this wiki or something, that I can trust. And then they have done their research, and in layman's terms, they are telling me that this is the kind of data that this company does not touch. Because right now it is probably buried inside a privacy agreement. Maybe some companies try to make it easy in sort of layman's terms,
Yeah.
but there's no one place where you can understand who is doing what.
It is sort of, you read my mind there, because I guess a year and a half ago I was like in this collaborative environment with Data Science Council of India and Data Security Council of India and Facebook. So they had released a collaborative challenge for the exact same thing. So they encouraged everyone to start thinking yourself as a startup founder, and how would you how would you be acting as a third party and regulating all these companies which are using the user data. So it's basically like you are being the intermediary between every user and every business that is trying to access the data of the user. So there were like different components that I also worked on, which was one, educating people on terms and conditions, right? Whenever you're signing up for something, like even for Facebook, everyone thinks that, hey, this is a free service for me. Like I can do whatever I want. Like I can connect to so many different people. I can post my pictures. I can post my videos. This is a great product for me. Whereas the passiveness behind that is you are the product. You are a free product for the company rather than Facebook being a free product for you. That is a missing piece that people don't understand. Whenever you're getting any application or any product for free, it is not free for you. Instead, it is who are the product for that particular company. And that's where we worked on, like how to make this terms and conditions more readable and more understandable for the users, so that nobody just like scrolls all the way down, clicks on I agree and creates the account. Like how can we make this more comprehensive for people to understand what are they exactly signing up for. And with GDPR, of course, that became a lot more easy, because GDPR does take like really strict measures on this. For example, I'll tell you an example where my friend sent me a screenshot that he signed up for some application, for some like food delivery application on his phone, and he immediately got an email, because that was surveillance under GDPR, that this particular company has access to XYZ data of yours. It is accessing your location and like these other information, and these are the only purposes for which they can use it. So that is the visibility that users need to have on what their data is being used for, which data is being collected, and they will have the right to say that I do not want to share this data with you, and I want my data, which is in your cloud, to be deleted. Right, so those are some of the features which comes with these regulations, where users have some transparency into what companies are doing, and that is being managed by a third party, of giving that visibility to the users on what companies are doing with their data. So that is what I was working on, like creating this third party intermediary, where users can interact with the third party and then in turn go to the company for all their products and services. So that is something which is really important, as you mentioned, because we need to have that regulation, and trusting each and every company, if they are regulating it, is a black box. Like as a user, you don't know what they're using it for, and are they even being accountable to you. So there has to be a third party who's taking control of ensuring that this is happening in each and every company.
Yeah. um, I I think the other side of this is like using consumer psychology, right? Like for example, and I did a lot of, it was a learning curve for me where, I now I have a couple courses out there and things like that that I'm helping people with. But even in that, even within that, right, it kind of there's a huge study around like, you place a button or do you not place a button, because that one button can take down your entire click through rate,
Yeah.
by a double digit percentage.
Yeah.
Right? So in light of this, when I am signing up for, let's say, a food delivery app or something like that, I am maybe hungry, right? There's a human factor there. I am maybe tired,
Yeah.
and I just want my food, right?
Yeah.
So in light of that, given my psychology is a certain type, and I know there's other products that are kind of doing it at a much more non, even when people are not hungry or whatever, right? But let's say it's a food delivery app, it's a more human manifestation of desires, right? um, what is there for me to be like, and that's my food, I want it, and I accept all the terms just because I'm hungry at that point.
Yeah.
And my hunger is a reason for me to give away all this information, which I would otherwise have read, or maybe I wouldn't have read, I don't know. But how do you balance this out? Like, I know I'm talking about like probably a not easily solvable problem here.
Yeah.
But what do you think about the interplay between psychology,
Yeah.
and the state of mind a certain consumer is in,
Yeah.
when they accept? It's like holding a gun to your head and telling you to accept the terms and conditions. I mean,
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
at least at that extreme, but
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
in indirectly.
So that's exactly where I mentioned that with these regulations, for example, I'll give you another example here. There were certain apps which were banned to use your microphone and camera because just the need of the application didn't need that, right? Like when you're looking at what's the aim of the application, for example, if I'm talking about this food delivery application, does it need to access your camera? Does it need to access your microphone? No. But still the application was built in a way that it was in turn accessing those information. So that is where these regulations is for. They are trying to map what is the need of the application and what are the information that are going into the application. So they are trying to be more secure in terms of what is going to be the intent and how can you make it more resilient. So that's something which needs to be taken care of, and that's where we are getting into all these regulations for, because initially it was not there, and initially we did see a lot of issues because facing this. One of the other application like issues I wanted to point out is with a workout logging application, and they produce this world map and they produce this chart saying that, you know what, like so many people in so many different countries are using our applications and this is how much they're working out. Unknowingly, they actually released out some of the US military bases in Afghanistan. So was that intended? No. And what was the issue there? Because the issue was that the company itself was not aware of what is a PII, what is a sensitive information, right? And just the basic factor that you are not supposed to be using individual human information for any sort of analysis. That's where like differential privacy and things like secure aggregation comes in place, because you want to understand, or like machine learning needs to understand the overall picture and not at individual data points. And these are some of the things which needs to be educated, like for data scientists who are working on these applications, for product managers who are designing these products, and like all in all, like the entire team which is working on these AI applications, that you need to be educated on understanding what PII is, what sensitive information is, what happens if certain information gets leaked out, right? So those are some of the factors which needs to be considered before designing these applications, and that's where most of the companies are building trusted AI and responsible AI systems so that they can curb these things from happening.
I see. Yeah. Thanks for that context, by the way. I think what happens behind the scenes is really like a black box, like you said, for people to understand, and I think that's good. So I know we can keep chatting all day about this, but the one thing that I get asked, and this is more from like my social network on LinkedIn and people that I'm helping guide and things like that. they asked me, hey, so and a few years ago, when probably I was studying, it was, hey, I should probably go into computer science. I should learn coding, and what kind of language do I learn and stuff like that, because there was this notion that there's a lot of jobs in computer science that you get, that open up for you if you go that route, right? And I can see that exact same thing happening with data science and ML and AI right now. I mean, it's almost gotten to a point where a lot of people don't necessarily understand what actually the difference between ML or AI or data science is, and they use those as sound bites to get into that space, just because there is this, just because a lot of people are taking, and rightfully so, because there's probably much more data to be mined out there in this ever-growing world, when more people are gaining connectivity and access to the internet, and more data to be collected and mined and worked on. There's probably going to be more demand for this than computer science as well, right? But or in the traditional term of software engineering. But that also brings up a point where people just blindly go into this just because there is like demand, right? So what do you advise folks on, like, should they take up data science in the first place?
Okay, so for me, data science or machine learning is like my passion, right? Like that's something I really love doing, and that's the reason I am in this field. If it's not something which you really love, for those who are like not even aware of the field and they just have this blind faith that I want to get a job as a data scientist, I would not recommend doing that. Because again, like as you mentioned, there's a demand. Yes, there is a huge demand for data scientists, but there's a huge demand for skilled data scientists, for specialized data scientists, and you can only achieve that specialization where you really have interest in that field, right? Like if you're jumping into a field just for the sake of salary, just for the sake of uh, thinking that it's one of the like eminent fields, that's probably will not make you a really skilled or a specialized person in that particular career. So as I would say, like this is something which comes to me a lot. People who are coming from like a completely different background, they tell me that they want to get into data science, and when I ask them why, the answer is it pays a lot. And that's not a reason why you get into a field. Again, like I do tell people, encourage them to read more about it, like get the foundations right, get the mathematics, statistics, like coding, and like the computational behind that right, before thinking of getting into this space, right? Like when you don't even know what it looks like, how can you even think of getting into it and like committing into that? And for me, like career is a commitment. I am not looking it into it from a from a monetary perspective. It is something where I want to wake up every day and work on it. I don't care about if it's a weekday or a weekend, if it's 5 p.m. or 9 a.m. That's something I really want to work on, and it is something I involuntarily do, even if it's not related to what I'm doing in my job, right? That's a field which I follow out of my passion. And if you want to really succeed in a career, or if you want to like make that eminence for yourself in a career, make sure you are interested in that, and then proceed from that. So if I have to answer this question, that should everyone take up data science? Absolutely not. But someone who is even remotely interested and like they feel that they might be a good fit into this role, and they are willing to like put that time commitment into getting into this field, yes, I'll like try to help as many people as they want into like getting more visibility into the field.
Yeah, this reminds me of my journey as well, where I'm essentially passionate about robotics, but then what in robotics, right? Like a lot of people ask me, how do you get into self-driving, or how do you get into robotics and all that? I mean, the simple answer to that is that you're now asking a question like, how do you get into like the woodcrafting industry, or how do you like it's an entire industry.
Exactly.
How do I get into working for an airline, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But like, what do you want to work as?
Yeah.
Do you want to work as the check-in agent,
Yeah.
or do you want to work as the software engineer who wants to work on the reservation system?
Yeah.
There's a lot of like nuanced questions that you need to ask, because robotics and self-driving is an evolving and upcoming industry.
Yeah.
But then you as a data scientist can play your role.
Exactly,
You as a mechanical engineer can play a
Yeah.
role. So it's important to understand the workings before trying to get into a certain
Yeah.
field. And this goes back to me and my story as well, where I wanted to pursue controls engineering, and that's what I went to like grad school for and got my degree in and stuff like that. And that's what I worked as. And then one thing led to the other, and I wanted like more scope and more purview of the things going on, and that's what led me into like designing products and getting into the like the design side of things and the product side of things from controls engineering. But then it has been an organic shift, an organic discovery process that I went through. And like probably 5 years ago, if you asked me if I wanted to be like a on the product side of things, I probably would have not known what that even is, right? It took me starting off as a controls engineer, working there, and then looking at okay, how things are around, what else can I learn more from and be passionate about and stuff like that, and then go into that. So I think you hit it right on point there, saying it is about it is about knowing why you want it in the first place. Yeah. All right, this has been a great chat. I know we could have chatted more, but thank you so much for joining today on this podcast.
Thank you so much.